Welcome in on Texas Football Tuesday night live stream right here on the On Texas Football channel. Aaron Hogan, Rod Babers, Jeff Howe, Matt Hutchinson produces, and we are off and running on a Tuesday night. Appreciate everybody tuning in, talking some Texas football for an hour plus. We got a lot to dive into. We've got mock drafts from ESPN. Got Mel Kiper position rankings. I'm back from the Senior Bowl, so excited to talk about that. And this would normally, guys, be the eve of National Signing Day. Jeff, how can you even quantify the difference now of what it used to be? National Signing Day tomorrow, where it's kind of like crickets out there as far as the recruiting scene. It is such a flip from what it used to be, not but 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, you go back to that 20. I guess that would be like the 2017 class that Tom Herman actually never signed that Charlie Strong put together. That was the last class where we didn't have the early signing period, and the 2016 class. So that would have been, what year are we in? So that would have been 9 years ago. This time 9 years ago, we're hunting down, hey, what's Brandon Jones going to do tomorrow? What's Eric Fowler and Jordan Elliott? What are these guys doing tomorrow? Now, Hay's in the barn. I mean, it's done and nothing going on for Texas tomorrow. So nothing really going to, as we've gone forward, the December signing period has really turned into National Signing Day because that's when the bulk of this stuff gets done. So you have a couple of things tomorrow, but I think for Texas fans, really, it is putting the bow on the number one class in the country. I mean, that's something that hasn't happened around this place very often, as good as recruiting has been at times. So celebrate that. But other than that, it's going to be a quiet day tomorrow on the 40.
Crazy. Good calendar. 9 years ago, it's been since that changed. I mean, we can debate whether it's good or bad, but it also has led, my right, Rod, to the accelerated guys finishing early, getting on campus by January. I mean, the Longhorns have 22 guys already on campus that are ready to go. I mean, you didn't have that opportunity when you came in. I mean, it's a huge, leap forward to not be a senior in high school, but actually be on campus going through winter workouts.
Yeah, these young men, they're way ahead way ahead of schedule, right? In terms of accomplishing their dreams. I think a lot of it, some of it is start the NIL clock. Let's be honest on that, right? I mean, that's why they tell you to hit the NFL early so you can get to the second contract. Or now some of that same logic applies to NIL. It's like, man, you want to get there sooner so you can get this NIL clock going. All right, the longer you're there, the more money you can make. So I think that's a little bit a part of it. But in terms of academics, I mean, these young men, they're ahead in their academics. I wasn't at that point, so I'll give them a lot of credits because a lot of these guys are on these very advanced, accelerated paths academically to graduate early and be able to obviously get to Texas early. So I like that too. So it is. I mean, to me, it's a whole new era. We did not have the early enrollees when I was on campus, and definitely National Signing Day was like the second most important day for college football fans, other than like the start of the season. It was National Signing Day, and now you're right, man. That's that's a fart in the wind. Nobody really cares about it. There's nothing to break on it, and it's pretty wild to actually think about that. But that's the new landscape. There are certain things that are just going to. I was talking to Coach Shipley about this because Matt Rule was proposing canceling his spring game because he believes tampering's out of control, and a spring game is just a showcase of your talent to the rest of the country. And then when that spring portal window opens up, they start plucking guys and looking for guys. Now maybe that's being overblown or not, but it did just make me think that whether it's walk-ons you're talking about too, with the new era, the new changing landscape of college sports, there are certain things that are going to be considered more of a burden than a benefit to the sport. And who knows, spring games may become that. Who knows, walk-ons may become that. But National Signing Day definitely seems to be that now. It's like it's actually, it's not really a benefit. I don't really see the benefit like days past.
Yeah. There's Lance saying National Signing Day was my Christmas. He used to take the old radio station. We'd have 3 days dedicated to that day. It would be unbelievable. The entire day on Wednesday would be like Christmas for sure. And it's totally changed. And we'll get into that debate about spring practice and showcasing talent and whatnot. But Jeff, when you look at this recruiting class, I mean, for our audience, how many times has Texas had the number one recruiting class, if you can remember? And, Sark has always had at least two guys that as true freshmen have had to be on the field. They were too good, right? It was Xavier Worthy and Kelvin Banks. It was Anthony Hill. And then, this year was Colin Simmons and Ryan Wingo, guys who were just too good to keep off the field. Are there a couple of players in this class at certain positions that maybe you think could be those guys that are just too good, or is Texas where they, on their depth chart, they're good. They don't really need freshmen to walk in and make an impact.
Well, the third member of our team here was part of a number one class in the country in 1999. 99 was number one. 2002 was number one. And Texas has had some classes. 2010 was one that got close. 2012 was one that got reasonably close. Sark has had a couple here that have gotten close, but doesn't happen very often because Nick Saban's been winning as many real national championships as he's won. He's won the recruiting championship more often. So, when I look at this class, I look at it from a couple of different vantage points. First off, in terms of where the talent is, it's on defense. Texas is now signing elite level SEC athletes at all three levels on defense. When you look at that defensive line, I mean, with Justice Terry, Myron Charles, and Josiah Sharma, that's three guys that are going to come in and probably going to need to help you in some way, shape, or form next year. I think Justice Terry could be a guy. I don't know if he's going to play as much as Colin Simmons did late in the year. We're going to see that arc, but he's going to be a guy that I think is going to have to be on the field. The guy, Rod, we've talked about him a little bit. The guy that I'm really excited about, that I'm glad he's here for spring ball, and it wouldn't shock me if he's starting at some point. I think Cade Phillips can come in and win a job at corner because of that position's typically one of the easier ones where the skills are going to translate. It's a smoother transition, if there is such a thing. There's no such thing as a smooth transition, but it's a smoother transition. Mm-hmm. And look, I'm a sucker for a 6'1", 185-pound corner who's a 25-foot long jumper with good track times and a 6'8" wingspan and everything Cade Phillips brings to the table. He's a 5-star prospect for a reason. So I think it's going to be on defense. On offense, the two positions, actually, I guess there's three, because Nick Townsend's going to have to give you something. He's one of the few signees that's not on campus right now. Townsend's going to have to give you something just because your numbers at tight end right now. I think the door is open for one of those receivers or a couple of those receivers to come in and take a job. And, Rod, we've talked about the need for a violent, short yardage, red zone, goal line runner. And you played with one of the best ones I've ever seen in Cedric Benson. I thought Cedric Benson of all the stuff he did well, I just thought he was a violent, nasty, downhill, short yardage, goal line, red zone runner. It's not going to shock me if James Simon is that guy. I just look at his background, his skill set, his body. He could be one of those guys. So, Cisco Diaz mentions, don't forget about Bo Barnes. I just think your linebackers are typically going to be your guys that fill out your special teams. They're your big skill guys. So, I look at those positions as guys that can make an impact, but this class, to me, it's all about the three levels of the defense getting you in a position where you can compete year in and year out in the SEC.
Yeah. Yep. Rod, from the corner side, we've talked to Cade Phillips here on the live stream. I know this is a mature guy. You talked about the clock has been sped up with these guys. And I know Kobe Black is planning to compete and win that job too. But man, that's what you want to hear is a young guy come in and try to win a job and bring that athleticism. That's the one thing I think I look forward to in 2025. This will be one of the more athletic defenses Texas has had. When you got Colin Simmons and Anthony Hill to build around that pass rush, and then those rangy, long secondary guys, Michael Taft to be kind of the quarterback. But man, the length, the athleticism in the back end is it's getting to. It looks like those old Georgia defenses we've seen in the last 5 or 6 years. Alabama before that are just, man, they're really tough to move the ball on.
No, I agree with you. The look of it in the secondary, I'm with you. They're going to look different because of the guys that they've been recruiting. Because these are the guys they're installing now, the body types, the traits that they've been recruiting in that back end, specific traits. And Jeff just mentioned a bunch of them with Cade Phillips. He seems to check all the boxes. But even your Kobe Blacks back there. We've talked about, Derek Williams will be coming back into the fold. Derek Williams kind of fits that. Xavier Filson, one of those guys. Jelani McDonald. It's a freak back there, no doubt about it, right? Taft's kind of the one that stands out that he doesn't have all those measurables because he's from kind of a different regime, but he's going to be the quarterback back there because nobody has the football IQ and acumen that he has with the experience that he has. So I'm with you. I think the body types will be different. I do wonder if, the guys that they're recruiting, because I think they've been recruiting coverage specialists in that back end. A guy like Cade Phillips, to Jeff's point, I think he can translate very quickly just playing man-to-man cat defense, right? You got that cat. That's easy. Everybody knows how to play that defense. You can play that defense, especially a guy like Cade Phillips. There's no need for, mental, preparation there. There's no need for him to have to know route combinations or have to be able to match players in coverage in terms of that. All you got to do is just cover your guy and you can have good technique. And he's a coverage specialist. So I do wonder if this defense will be switching, to some more man-to-man concepts a lot of the times, simplified for these guys. But like you said, physically, they can match up. You're playing a lot of pattern match, which is what they've been doing the last couple of years. That's a lot of route, you got to write route deciphering and figuring out and diagnosing exactly what route combinations are coming. A lot of pre-snap diagnosis, not saying the guys can't do that, but there'll be a younger group trying to do that. And that may be a little bit tougher. That may be a little bit more challenging than it was for the previous group.
Jeff, let me ask you this. I'll tee you up for this because ESPN came out with their way too early preseason 2025 All-American teams, and Anthony Hill was the one Longhorn that made it, which stands to reason. He should have been a Butkus finalist last year and comes back for his junior year. Who else would you put as top, and you, Rod, too, the top 2 or 3 guys that would also, in your mind, be able to push for being an All-American? That's where Texas is now. It's not about all conference. It's about All-Americans. Obviously, Arch Manning is the one that leaps to mind, but who are some other guys that you think, Anthony Hill notwithstanding, think you could play to that All-American level?
Well, I looked at that team. Colin Simmons was on the second team, so I think he's going to be a guy in that mix. Michael Taft had an All-American year last year. He'll be in that mix. Arch was a second team quarterback, so that's an entirely different discussion we can get into. But the guy on defense that I think has a chance, you could look at one of those pass rushers, but Manny Muhammad's a better player than he played like as a sophomore. And I think about a guy who as a freshman was the best corner you had on the roster. I think, and Rod, you can definitely correct me if I'm wrong here, I feel like a lot of Manny's issues later in the year were just he was getting more stuff thrown at him because teams just stopped going at Jahdae Barron. So corner is one of those positions like offensive tackle. There can be other guys that mess up and somebody can be there to cover it. Man, when you screw up, it completely destroys a play. It destroys the integrity of your offense or your defense. You're giving up a sack. You're giving up a tackle for loss. You're giving up a touchdown or a big play over the top. So I feel like Manny Muhammad, if he can kind of refocus this winter and the spring and say, okay, that was probably the worst I could have played. It's the worst I've played since I've been here, yet I kind of stared the devil in the face and I'm okay. And now I'm going into a draft eligible year, a contract year. If he can put it all together, you've got a guy that's a first team all SEC caliber guy, an All-American caliber corner. So I feel like, and plus, we talk about Cade Phillips and Kobe Black. He's the veteran in that corner room now. We talk about the young guys, but he's the veteran in that group. So I feel like for this Texas defense, if they're going to ascend and the step backward, the drop is not going to be that significant, or maybe you can hold serve a little bit, I think it'll be because Manny Muhammad had a really, really good year, an All-American caliber year at corner.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the better quarterbacks they played, it seems like that's when you saw Manny get exposed a little bit. And to me, because he's a technician, it was a little bit shocking, but a lot of his issues were technique errors, right? It was just flawed technique by him, closing off his hips in man coverage by shooting with the wrong arm. Sometimes, in my opinion, turning the wrong way, or man turn, he should be zone turning, a zone turn when he probably should have been man turning in those situations. So it was simple stuff that I think you can correct just by him looking on film, doing a little bit of self-scouting. I think Manny's a really good player. There's no doubt, though, when they played more, high-level quarterbacks, that's when Manny got exposed. There ain't no doubt about it. And I will say this, though. I think ultimately, like you said, I think he can have a bounce-back year. The pass rush is going to help him out a lot, too. And I think that's where I'll go. I mean, other than Anthony Hill, Colin Simmons should be on that list to be a guy that can – to be a potential All-American. This is a guy that didn't even play a lot. You got to look at his snaps last year compared to impact plays and splash plays he made. So in addition to Anthony Hill, and I like the pick by Jeff of Manny Muhammad. Obviously, Michael Taft's already in that conversation. Colin Simmons is a freshman All-American. I'm sure on somebody's list, but I think that's a guy that should be getting double-digit sacks easy next year. I say easy because he got – 9 this year. He had 9 of them. I believe 7 of them came in that NASCAR package. So to me, he's the guy that can really, if his impact continues, if it translates to the amount of snaps he's going to get, and he gets that many more snaps as a starter, as opposed to being a situational, boutique player last season, which is basically what he was, guys. He didn't play a lot of snaps. So later on in the season, started playing more regular snaps outside the NASCAR package. If he can keep up the impact along with that snap and that usage, that guy is definitely going to be an All-American, and he'll be a double-digit sack guy, no question.
Well, only one I would add on defense is if Trey Moore, because there's so much attention on Colin Simmons, plays like he did in the second half of the year, in the first half, and the whole season. Trey Moore coming back for another year out of UTSA, transferring in, could be a guy. Just because, to me, his numbers jumped when Colin Simmons had such an impact early that everyone was focused on him. Yep. And Trey Moore all of a sudden exploded and erupted for 6 or 7 sacks in the last half of the year. So that would be one other. On offense, Jeff, I know your specialties offensive line. That was your position. The one returning offensive lineman is DJ Campbell. I'm not saying he's going to be an All-American, but doesn't he really have to rally and be the leader of this offensive line and be the guy that is that 5-star guy that becomes kind of the engine of that group?
Yeah, and I thought it was a no-brainer decision for him to come back. I didn't think he needed to be anywhere near the draft and just focus on coming back in winter conditioning, go through spring ball, and get better. He's a guy that, and I don't mean this as a knock, even though it's going to sound like it. He's frustrating. He's frustrating because when he flashes and puts it together, he's dominant. I've seen stretches of games where DJ Campbell has been dominant. Like, you go back, I still think the best game he played, guys, was that Sugar Bowl against Washington. I mean, There was a couple plays, especially down around the goal line, where, he's taking a guy in front of him and driving him back 6-7 yards and burying him in the end zone. That's exactly what you want a road grader to do. Rod, we talked about this, like this offensive line, this 2023-24 version of the offensive line, they didn't have a ton of just road graders, guys that just could latch onto people, run their feet, and just bury guys down the field. I feel like you've got a chance to see that change this year with your interior line. If it's Cole Hudson at center, which I think that might be the best position for him, and you can flank him with Nato Mazzulau and DJ Campbell, now you've got 2 big road grader type guards that maybe your short yardage run game will be better just because of those 2 guys. I'm not saying they're going to fix everything, but it could be better. But yeah, it's hard for a guard, unless you're Quentin Nelson or something like that. It's hard for a guard to elevate to an All-American level where he's making everybody around him better. But yeah, DJ Campbell needs to be the guy that, the coaches don't need to sub him out. He needs to be in every high leverage situation. He needs to be on the field. Don't give that staff a reason to make you a platoon player.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. He's right about that.
Anybody else on offense, Rod, or comment on DJ? Again, All-Americans, a big number. That's the best at your position, first or second team for sure. Anybody else that stands out as guys? Because defense for sure is going to be the foundation of this team early and throughout the year. Who on offense do you think maybe could be in that mix?
That's tough offensively, just because some of the guys I like, they're at really deep position. Like I love Ryan Wingo. I think he's awesome. I just think it's going to be tough to be an All-American at wide receiver, because some really good wide receivers coming back next season, as we know, some of the best we've seen in a long time. And they're young guys, by the way. That freshman class we were just talking about for Texas, it's a freshman class, at least a wide receiver around the country with, Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams. Those guys are fantastic. So I like Ryan Wingo. I think he should be the number 1 receiver for Arch. I'm not sure if that gets you in the All-American conversation. About the offensive line, though, to add to what Jeff was talking about, I can't wait. It'd be interesting to see, because your strength with your tackles, obviously starting with Kelvin Banks and then bringing in Cam Williams, even before that, Christian Jones, guys, an NFL player. So that was seen as a strength of the offensive line for a while. And Texas running to the edges with the outside zone specifically, that was seen as kind of their bread and butter run play. And when teams were able to neutralize that, then Texas didn't have any other place to turn. They couldn't generate any other yards on the ground in that type of way, not with the power concepts in the run game and the interior run game. So it will be interesting to see that if maybe the strength of this particular offensive line, if it does switch to being the interior of the offensive line, and then maybe those guys are maulers, kind of like Jeff was saying, if Texas run game becomes maybe a little bit more diverse, or maybe they lean on some other concepts other than, the outside zone to be their key run concept, the one that really is the catalyst for them in the running game. Because that was a little bit of a concern last season, that basically when teams found a way to stop your outside zone, man, you didn't have an explosive run in the last 2 games, guys. That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's wild to think of. I think you had one. So maybe they had one by I think Wisner and Ohio State, but you had one explosive run, I think, in the last 2 games.
The other thing to that, Rod, I like what you said about the diverse run game. I think Sark needs to be diverse this year, because with that line, you could have outside zone be your staple, because it takes a long time and a lot of reps for an offensive line to become a really good zone blocking unit. I mean, that's all about teamwork and reps and communication and all the stuff we talk about with a really good offensive line. It takes a long time to do that. You don't have a lot of time to get that established with this group, especially with 4 new pieces. I know Gooseby started some last year, but it's going to be a whole different deal when you're not just kind of filling in on a 1-week basis. You're going to go into spring ball as the guy, and you're going to be the guy pretty much the whole way through. So I do think, some more duo stuff, where pin pulls, where you can create leverage and angles and help your guys out. I think that's going to help. But I also think, just going back to it, I'm not saying this line is going to be less athletic than the line we've seen the last 2 years, but I just think their specialty, especially with Neto, with DJ Campbell, even with a guy like Brandon Baker, the more straight ahead those guys go, the better off they're probably going to be, especially for young offensive linemen. You want them to get comfortable just getting their hands on people and trying to get vertical. So I think you're going to see more diverse run concepts. You're going to need to see it until this group gets comfortable to the point where Sark and Kyle Flick can say, all right, now we feel like these 2 things are going to be our bread and butter, or this concept, hey, we can lean on being an inside zone team. It might not be that. Just kind of let it develop and don't go into spring ball. Just don't go. If I'm Sark, just don't go into spring ball with any kind of preconceived notions about what you want this line to be. Just let it happen organically.
To your point, that's what Ohio State did, right? When Ohio State had the injuries on the offensive line, they lost multiple starters on the O-line, had to move another starter out of position, and they didn't have the continuity. They didn't have the kind of chemistry. So they pretty much abandoned a lot of their zone blocking concepts. And we know Chip Kelly loves the inside zone. They went to a ton of gap power schemes. Probably like 75% of their run game became gap power schemes because, as Jeff mentioned, it's easy. It's easy assignment football for offensive line. It's like, no, man, it's basically like man-to-man coverage for DBs. Like, no, you got that dude. Go maul that dude. Just go maul him, and your job is done. And so I think you might be right. Maybe early on they start with that until this group they get a little bit more nuanced their game and start to learn, because they are really new, talented, but a really new, inexperienced offensive line.
The quarterback run will help too, just because that extra hat in the run game, it matters. To a defense, it matters. When you've got to account for the quarterback, it changes the numbers game. It changes your leverage. It changes how you line up. I mean, it changes everything when you've got to account for the quarterback in the run game.
It's true. But then Sark gonna tell all right, to not to keep it.
Yeah.
Those old read fakes will be like, dude, no, you hand it off. And I think they'll get to a point where they'll struggle with that a little. Because I think Archie will be like, man, that defensive end crashing down. I'm keeping that damn thing. So I think maybe once or twice a game, maybe he'll decide to keep some of those. But as they go on, Sark, he's stubborn about it. They don't major in quarterback run game. But Jeff's right. You got to respect it. You have to respect. You've already seen the highlights now. So if you don't respect it and you're beat on it, your coach, you'll be mad at you as a defensive coordinator going, dude, didn't you see this guy? Everybody's been talking about how fast he is and how athletic he is. You didn't have a man on the quarterback. So I Jeff, you're right about that. I think it'll help in the red zone too. Yes. And I think the scrambling element will be, because that Sark can't control that. All right. I think when the play breaks down and then Archie's just got to use his instincts, I think that's when you'll really see the benefits of the mobility at the quarterback position.
I think you'll I guarantee you against Ohio State there'll be a short yardage run play where Wisner gets it on a 3rd and 2 and gets stopped for 1 yard. It's like, why didn't Arch just pull it and keep it on that zone read? That's because it wasn't his own read. Sark's going to limit how many times he exposes Arch. So don't get all bit out of shape. It's like, oh, Arch made the wrong read. No, Sark probably told him, you hand that damn ball off. I don't care. I will stab you.
For real. That's exactly right.
Quoting Sark many, many times. We do not major in the quarterback run. I would also say CJ Baxter should be back and healthy, and that's going to help a lot. If you guys are going with that pin and pull and power run game, that should help a lot. for that type of running back.
That's true.
To really get after it, especially early in the year, as you're trying to establish your line of scrimmage against good teams like Ohio State, be able to run that ball, play action, those type of things as we go forward. All right, so good topics there. We'll take your super chats and chats on that. Freshman that's going to force himself on the field. Is it mostly on defense, as they talked about, and also on offense, the All-American conversation? Who are guys that can play to that level in 2025 in your mind? As we look forward to National Signing Day without much to it, hey, Rod, tell about Andy Ludicky. We're going to get into some mock drafts coming up. Also, the other stories of the night here on the On Texas Football Tuesday watch along. But tell them about Andy Ludicky, one of our great partners every Tuesday night.
Yes, sir. Thank you to Andy Ludicky and his team for being a part of our team here at On Texas Football. Now, if you're looking to diversify, you may be someone like me that has their hands in lots of different businesses. Well, Andy can help you diversify your business by finding you businesses that will fit your time allotment and your financial goals. You can give him a call today. See the number right there on your screen, 404-973-9901. Or you can reach out to him via email at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. If you're stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks PTO and no control over the money you can make or your schedule in general, call Andy and he will take you through a process to help you find a business that will fit your skill sets and your financial goals. We understand that franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your financial destiny, just give Andy a call today. 404-973-9901, or reach out to him via email at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. So thank you very much to Andy Ludicky and his team for being a part of our team here at On Texas Football and sponsoring our Tuesday night live stream.
Thank you, Andy. Great stuff, Rod Babers. And all right, guys, something you brought up a minute ago, Rod, about the spring games and Texas, and even Sark has talked about, having been in the NFL, the changing calendar. National Signing Day is tomorrow, and there's not going to be much happening. It'll almost be ignored, the late window. But, Matt Rule did cancel spring game for the exposure to his young guys. What, Sark has talked about this, like he was in the NFL, mini camps becoming more of a thing. Is that feasible? I mean, we just had the UT baseball alumni game this weekend, and I know Jim Schlossnagle talked about how important it was to have that. Like, there are a lot of baseball programs that have gone the same direction. They're not doing the alumni game. They're not doing those things. UT, meanwhile, got 120 alumni come back for a part of that, for the golf tournament and for the game and playing in it. And it's important. I mean, there are 5,000 or 6,000 people out of Dishfalk Field on Saturday for that game. I know baseball is different than football, but the passion's even more. Yep. Is that something Texas would ever consider not doing? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a changing landscape. You got to change with the times and adjust as it comes. Matt Rule's going there, whether it's warranted or not. Would Texas ever think about not doing the spring game?
I think you should, have the conversation to talk about the advantages and disadvantages. I don't think that Texas would be that paranoid about it. I know Matt Rule is seriously considering canceling the spring game altogether, and I get that. He may be in a different position program-wise than Texas, but, I think Texas, a lot of it, you just mentioned it, is for the fans and the culture and this very kind of this special connection Texas believes it has with its, alumni and with its fans. And you talked about the family atmosphere of all these different programs, baseball and football. And trust me, it's like that for softball. It's like that all around Texas. There's a lot of pride in that too. So I think Texas will be one of the last because I think Texas sees it as a service almost to its fans. But I definitely get why coaches are paranoid about them, their programs being poached and tampered with, because tampering, listen, if it is a rule that's on the books, essentially it's one that can't be enforced. And it's the most violated rule in the books. It's like speeding, basically. Everybody speeds and everybody tampers these days. So I don't even know why it's even a thing. So, yeah, I mean, of course, there are people looking at his roster. And if you don't have the, NIL resources of some programs like a Texas, when these guys want to renegotiate, which is kind of what they go to the portal to do, to see what their market value is. And if they're threatening going to the portal, right, your agent can threaten. He was almost in the portal. We've had some of those at Texas. I thought he was going to the portal. Oh, no, it turns out he's happy. Those are usually renegotiations. If you don't have the leverage and you don't have necessarily the deep pockets to be able to do that, Texas has that luxury. I can see why they're paranoid about it. Yeah, I mean, it's a realistic thing, but I think it's a problem for everybody around the country. Small schools got to worry about their top guys being poached. big schools got to worry about their backups, like a Malik Murphy or something like that being poached if they show out in the spring game. Everybody's got to worry about it. It's a thing everybody's going. So it'd be different if it was affecting just one school specifically. But literally remember Malik Murphy balled out, and there were reports that schools going out with Malik Murphy. That's just a reality of where we are now. I mean, so they have to. College sports is going to have to decide that which one of these. Some of these things are just going to be more of a burden than a benefit to the sport at this point. And I talk about that a lot. Right? The penny is more of a burden than a benefit on society. It costs more to make the damn thing than it's worth. Like, why the hell are we making the penny? Who cares? Right? More of a burden than a benefit to society. I think that's one of those things. Spring game could end up being when we get to revenue sharing, and now we got transfer portal. We get to all of these different elements. It may be more of a burden than a benefit. It may be something they decide, you know what? Nah, it's not worth it. It's something that an antiquated part of college sports. It'll be sad, and I would hope they would put something in place to replace that, right? Whatever it may be, and I don't know, maybe live practices, whatever they want to do if they're no longer going to have a spring game. But I think that is something, that people they're seriously going to discuss and consider, because I do think it's a real threat now. Whether it's a threat that can destroy your program, like I said, everybody deals with it, though. Every school's got to deal with that. Texas State and University of Texas, both of them.
100%. At a different level. And he mentioned Malik Murphy, Jeff. I mean, heck, Trey Owens last year was ripping the ball around out there. And it's like, people see that, and that's everybody's looking for quarterbacks. Everybody's looking for good players, and that makes it a challenge when it's on television.
Yeah, Rod mentioned Texas State, and that's the group that I think I would not, if I'm GJ Kinney or a G5 coach, if I can avoid having my spring game televised, there's no way I do it, because that is where teams are going to poach from. If you need a pass rusher, receiver, whatever you need, hey, with all due respect to, James Madison or Marshall or whoever, yeah, if I'm a P4, I can pay more. I can convince you to get in the portal. I mean, especially last year during the draft when we had Nick Saban come out and say, yeah, we were waiting for Quinyon Mitchell to get in the portal. We thought he was going in, but he didn't. It's like, all right, that's Nick Saban just blatantly mentioned he tampered with Quinyon Mitchell last year, so we'll just sweep that under the rug. But yeah, here's what I think. I think this goes back to, in a day and age where coaches are losing control over more and more, they're trying to find those few things where, what can I control? And if you're Matt Rule, yeah, I can control there not being a spring game, because whatever TV says or whatever, I'm the head coach. If I say we're not having a spring game put on television, an exhibition, we're not going to do it. Now, what I would do, because like you said, Rod, everybody's in a different position on this thing. So it's like, okay, if you don't want to have a spring game, what are you going to do? If I'm Sark, I have a live practice. This is what I do. I have a live, just let people into practice, just structure it like you would normally say, hey, if you want to come out and watch practice, great. We're not going to have like a normal spring game. But what I would do at the end is I would do like a live quarter where I've got my youngsters, my spring enrollees, because you want to get those guys some live reps in front of a crowd. And the guys that have already told you or have given an indication, look, they're probably going to the portal. Let those guys treat that like that last NFL preseason game where, hey, this may be my one chance to put something on tape for when I go into the portal. So let me get some snaps during that live quarter, at least so I've got something to show for it whenever schools start contacting me and want some tape other than just practice cut-ups. At least I've got a TV copy of something to take with me. So there are ways you can work around it, but unfortunately, I do agree with Rod. I think they're just becoming more of a burden, and you're going to see teams do something. And look, for me, I'm a football nerd. So if you say, hey, if you want to come out and watch 2 hours of practice, you're more than welcome. Well, shoot, you ain't got to. Don't tell me. I mean, I'll sit out there and watch all the practice you want. I go back to Tom Herman's first spring, his spring game. It wasn't a spring game. They just did a practice and had some, live reps at the end, and ended with some goal line. I'm like, hey, I saw what I need to see. I'm happy. So for me, I know I speak for a very, very small percentage. I don't need the spring game, the exhibition, whatever. But you got to give the fans something.
Well, I mean, exactly. I think that's a great idea, Jeff. By the way, though, the one quarter kind of thing, because that's a recruiting element. Like, there are guys on the back end of this roster that are going to want to look into the portal because they don't have a path to playing, and they're at Texas and they working their tail off. And they can put some tape on film, or as you say, the last preseason game, they can put some film on tape and say, we're probably going to be moving on here. that's a great content. That's just, supporting the student athlete, letting them, have a path forward to play football, because that's all they want. But you want to protect your top end guys you don't want anybody to know about. Agree with you 100% on the G6 groups as far as that goes. And we'll see. We'll follow it. I'm assuming there'll be one, because we're not going to get a press conference from Sark tomorrow. That's been confirmed. There won't be any conversation, and so we'll wait to see what the schedule looks like as far as when spring practice starts, when the spring game will be, if there's going to be a spring game, and all those things. Sark has talked about mini camp kind of style thing that he's looked at, but we'll see where that goes. And I do think there needs to be a gathering of fans, and 40,000 people out there getting fired up. Arch Manning throws some passes, all that kind of stuff can be done without featuring the things you don't want to feature in those conversations. All right, so good stuff right there, guys. As we move forward, let me ask you about the Combine, which is kind of the next big NFL event. I want to get some mock drafts here in a minute, because Matt Miller from ESPN got his latest mock draft, and he's got 5 Longhorns in the first 50 picks, which is pretty crazy. Longhorns have not done that since the early 40s, if you're paying attention. But 3 in the first 16 picks, 5 in the first 50. But the Combine, guys, how many? I was trying to add this up in my head before we came on tonight. How many Longhorns do you think get invited to the Combine? Because that's the next phase. That starts at the end of the month. But I think it would be 12, 13 Longhorns invited, because the Combine, for folks who out there just watch college football, the Combine is really who the NFL wants to see. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The Combine know, okay, we want to see these guys. Get them here. We want to do medicals. We want to see them. We want to interview them. So the Horns could have, as many as 12, 13 guys invited to the Combine. I don't know that for sure, but when you talk about 3 offensive linemen, a tight end, 2 receivers at least, Jaden Blue, do they invite Jaden Blue? Defensively, obviously, there's a bunch of guys. How do you think that plays out with the Combine, which I think at some point right after the Super Bowl, we'll hear what those invites look like. Horns could have a bevy of guys on their way to Indianapolis.
No, let's just go through it, because I think you're right. I don't know do we know the record for Combine invites for Texas? We got to look at that, because we might be close to it. So we got Kelvin Banks, that's for sure, right? Janae Barron, that's for sure. Matthew Golden, that's for sure. Cam Williams, Isaiah Bond, right? So we're at 5 now. There's Alfred Collins, definitely. Gunnar Helm, definitely. Quinn Ewers, definitely. Makuba, definitely. I think Makuba's definitely. Makuba's definitely going to the Combine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's a 3rd round pick, probably.
Michigan had 18 last year.
Okay. Well, there you go, Jeff.
Yeah, they're not getting that. Thanks for that, Jeff. What's Texas's record? That's what we got to figure out, because
Well, so if you just stay on offense, you're going 3 offensive linemen,
and then
Gunnar Helm tight end, Bond, and
Golden.
Ewers, Matthew Golden,
Golden will go. So
Jake
you're
Majors, Jaden Blue.
Yeah, defensive line. It's going to be Broughton and Collins will be invited. Barron, Sorrell, so 3 on the D line. David Benda probably doesn't get an invite, but we'll see at linebacker. And then in the defensive backfield, you're looking at Jade and Makuba as 2 guys who are going to go.
I think 13 is what you're looking at. Yeah. I say realistically, just kind of names that you just went over and we brought up. You got 13 guys. And that's not Benda. That's just Broughton, Blue, Majors, Sorrell, Makuba, Ewers, Helm, Collins, Bond, Williams, Golden, Barron, Banks.
I wouldn't be surprised, because I don't think he's going to get drafted. But does a guy like Silas Bolden get a Combine invite just because teams would want to see what he runs?
Yeah.
And get verified height and weight.
Yeah, I think that's right. And medicals on all these guys. That's because, again, this is who they want to see that they would consider not just draft picks, but preferred free agents and those kind of things. They're building their board out, and they want to, nitpick and find the good and the bad and the ugly on each one of these players. And this is, Jeff, you can speak to this. It's flipped 180 degrees because, now NFL teams want to see Texas players. They want to dig deeper on some of these guys and say, okay, tell me about this Silas Bolden guy. Tell me about this Jaden Blue guy. We like some of the intangibles here, but we're not sure. And that's not just for everybody when they focus about the draft. We talk about the first round and the second round. For these teams, this is the number 1 player acquisition element they have for their roster. So they want to evaluate as many guys as they can up close, get the interviews, build the file. All those things. And so you could see 12, 13, maybe 15 guys from the Longhorns invited to the Combine.
Yeah. My question, because Rod, you're more in tune to some of this stuff than I am. I'm starting to feel like it gets this way more every draft cycle we go through. The Senior Bowl's a big deal, the Combine's a big deal, but it feels like teams are putting more emphasis on the top 30 visits. I know you get the measurables done at the Combine, and there's stuff you can get done at Combine, and guys can run at Pro Day or whatever. But I just feel like for teams, the bulk of their work is going to be done on those top 30 visits.
Yeah, I would love to see. I'm sure there are a lot of team sites that do it because I know the Cowboys is a strong correlation between those top visitors and guys that they have drafted
100%.
In the past. And I bet team to team, you're probably right about that, Jeff. I haven't seen like a deep dive analysis on the macro, the entire league, but a couple of teams that is a strong. I even think the Texans have brought in a lot of guys they end up drafting too. So I think you might be right about that. That's a really good point. And I think the reason is because you can, like you said, you can get all the measurables and tangibles that you need from the Combine. And you can watch the film, of course. You got to watch. Nothing replaces watching a guy actually play a game. And you got to watch a game. You can't just watch cut up. So you got to watch a game. Or you watch situations. I want to watch him on every third down. I want to see what his instincts are like. I want to watch him against the run. You know what I mean? Like they want to watch you situationally, but you want to watch. I like watching a player throughout a whole game. That's what I was told by scouts. It's the best thing to do. Because then you can watch them respond to certain situations. Watch them respond to adversity. Watch him have a bad play. See how they bounce back. You want to see that because you're going to have a bad play in the game, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of getting to know the players, getting back to E's point, you can really kind of get to know the football character. We drop that term a lot with Sark, football character. And I think that Sark's recruiting different football character traits now, right? Mm-hmm. Players from championship programs. He likes that because they seem to already have advanced football character. It's get weeded out or it gets cultivated. He seems to like multi-sport athletes. He said, not really because of the athletic profile. I like it because it shows you that they're humble. That they're willing to put their ego aside because they're not always the best at every sport. Mm-hmm. They have to go be a team guy at any other sport and put their ego aside. And so he's looking at certain character traits. He actually kind of likes the guys don't talk NIL first. That's one of the things they talk about with certain, like don't lead with NIL. Like don't lead with that. If you lead with that, kind of turns them off. Like, all right, we're gonna give you your money, but don't lead with it. Let's talk about other things. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. So I think he's looking for certain traits. I think certain teams are now too. But not now, they always have been. But now maybe more of an emphasis on. We want to see. I want to know if they got these football traits. I need to know if they got these football character traits that make them compatible with our organization. Jay Witt with the Rams is a prime example. All right. Not only did he get great references from former players that were on the roster, but also they talked about his football character and how that was a big reason why they decided to roll the dice because he seemed like a guy that would fit their locker room. And they said he'd be a great guy to have in your locker room. They didn't even know that he was going to end up being a guy to make their roster and actually provide them, as you pointed out, with talented depth, Jeff. But they were kind of drafting football character traits.
Yeah.
And looked past the injury history and said, now the character traits actually may be something that translates and it looks like it's got a lot of upside. And turns out now with him dealing with injuries a lot better, being more durable, they might have got a diamond in the rough.
Yeah, I think too. Just a couple of tidbits from the draft. I've seen there's no rhyme or reason why teams like guys. I remember the Texans took Deontay Foreman when they took him in the third round. I was at his draft party and we were talking. I was like, man, we weren't even talking about the Texans. And he said the only time I met with the Texans, he said I didn't meet with them at the combine. He said he went because teams will have like a local college day where high school guys that went to school in the area. Or if you went to one of the area colleges, they'll just invite guys, hey, come work out. He just he was at home to say, hey, I'll just go up and work out with the Texans. I don't have nothing else to do. And they drafted him based off that workout. That was the only pre-draft interaction they had. And with Jay Witt, you forget, Rod, Sean McVay's son's on the team.
Yes, right.
So that's a good reference. And if you remember when the Cowboys drafted DeMarvion Overshown, the last call that they made, say what you want about the Cowboys, it was Jerry Jones calling his grandson, Paxton Anderson, who had his locker next to DeMarvion Overshown, and was like, tell me one more time everything you know about Overshown. And they ended up turning the card in. So it's weird how many different places it come from. I'll say this too, the pro day for guys, especially the guys that go to the combine and you don't want to retest. Yeah, it's the on-field drills. The interviews at pro day are a really, really big deal for guys because you can have 5-6 teams meet with you during pro day. They'll do it the night before, the day of, whatever. I think there's a certain time frame before and after the workout where you can interview guys. Yeah. So the pro day interviews are becoming a really big thing. It's not just teams just hanging on, putting everything on the combine. They're trying to maximize resources as they go through this thing.
And it's crazy to that point, though, Jeff, just like we all know in life now, right? It's not about what you know, it's about who you know. To that point, Les Snead has his son on the Texas team and gives him the referral, if you will, the recommendation for Jay Witt. Same thing with DeMarvin Overshawn. You talked about that with the Jones family. Even in my draft experience, I went and trained with Phil Simms. I don't know if he still has it actually, but he was on this early, so I know he made good money on it. He had a combine training facility. It was like to help guys kind of train for the combine. And I believe he maybe like a part owner of it or something like that. But I went up there to train for the combine up there. And it was in Jersey. All right. That's where the Sims family lives, in Jersey. And up there, got a chance to know a couple of New York Giants, like coaches and like front office folks, just because he's a Giant, New York Giants. They would like work out that kind of stuff. Ended up being drafted by the Giants. Like, I still don't think that was just coincidence. So I do think they probably regret that draft pick, but I do believe that in terms of due diligence, they believe like, hey, we had a different relationship and we looked into some of the football character traits that we liked, and we were able to investigate, all right, kind of the background of the young man, and through multiple, different multiple different people, they were to kind of verify, like, no, it all tracks. What we researched about this young man, we like him. Let's draft him in the 4th round. So I think it's always been the case, and now maybe there's more of an emphasis on it. But you'd be surprised how those relationships, those degrees of separation, end up helping a guy get drafted. I think it happens probably more oftentimes than we know.
Man, I've as I've gotten older and done this more years, nothing surprises me with the draft. When I hear a high school coach of a guy that gets drafted, he's like, man, you wouldn't believe the law enforcement agencies or government agencies that these teams are using to do background checks on guys and resources they're gathering. It's there's nothing with this process, Rob, that surprises me anymore at this point.
No. Well, they only get 7 picks a year, and that's how they acquire the core of their team. Big picture. It's a big investment. So, I mean, you can, it's a massive, massive process. And to the point of the 30 visits, I think that's where the combine is so interesting, because they only get 30 of the on-campus visits, or as you would call them, or in-house visits. So the combine becomes a really important way to rank them. Now, which guys do we really want to invite? Let's get to know these guys who kind of fits our kind of guy kind of mindset. Let's bring those guys in, and they end up typically getting drafted, and there's a lot of different ways. So we'll see. That's coming. The draft at the end of the month. We're sitting here on the first week of February. The draft the combine will be the last week of February into early March. It stretches out over about 7 days in Indianapolis. So we'll certainly cover that on future Tuesdays here on the On Texas Football Channel. It's funny, but I'm going to tell you about Mark Saunders and the team at Allstate, but Matt Miller, the NFL draft scout from ESPN, was on the radio show the other day, and he talks about how he's got this little sticky note that he's got now that says, just draft good football players. Draft good football players. Cut out this draft good football players, and he's using that as his thing. And we'll talk about his mock draft coming up, where he has 5 guys in the top 50 for the Longhorns, 3 in the top 16. But first, let me tell you about Mark Saunders and the team at Allstate. If are you in good hands becomes the question. As we always say here, as we're pushed past 8 o'clock now, when you put your head on the pillow tonight, go to sleep, is all your stuff covered? Is everything you have under one place where you want it to be, and that it's covered. That's what Mark Saunders and his team at Allstate wanted to make sure that you have. He's a lifelong Longhorn fan and wants to help you in those cases, and that's what it's about. Are you protecting all your stuff? More than 35 years of experience you will be with Texas alum Mark Saunders. If you're not actually sure and you kind of put your head on the pillow and think, I don't know. Well, you need to call Mark and the Allstate agent there, especially if you're in Austin, Round Rock, Williamson County area, Travis County. He's the only insurance agent you'll need. Everything from your home, your cars, your boats, motorcycles, RVs, ATVs, everything under one policy. 512-219-8571. That's 512-218-8571. Plus, We'll be working with the Longhorn who will talk football with you and the rest. Very comfortable, like minds. We'll be thinking about it. So ask yourself again as you go to sleep tonight or any night, are you in good hands? More than 35 years of experience, you will be with the Texas alum Mark Saunders, one of our great Tuesday night live stream partners for a long, long time now. 218-8571. We appreciate him. 218-8571. Mark Saunders, Allstate. Check him out. Are you in good hands? All right, guys, that Matt Miller mock draft. He's a big fan of the Longhorn guys. He talked about the draft good players, and he said to us that, the Longhorns are delivering a lot of really good football players into the draft. He mentioned that Kelvin Banks, is going to get knocked a little bit for his total length. So maybe he's not the elite tackle, but he's going to be an amazing guard if he is into the NFL. But he has him going 10th to the Chicago Bears. Matthew Golden, really good football player who emerged as the number one receiver for the Longhorns, has him 12 to the Dallas Cowboys. Jahdae Barron, 16 to the Arizona Cardinals. A guy who's just a really good football player. Also, Quinn Ewers, 42 to the Jets. Alfred Collins, 50 to the Seattle Seahawks, where the Seahawks last year took Byron Murphy with pick 16 in the first round. That would give them 2. So 5 in the top 50. Longhorns have not done that as a program since 1942. Just y'all's thoughts on those names, those spots, and certainly how high. I mean, when you're looking at Kelvin Banks 10, that might be lower than some thought. Matthew Golden 12, Jahdae Barron 16, Quinn 42.
I'll just throw this out there because I want to get Jeff's thoughts. But initially, getting back to your point about what Matt Miller said, because I love that, was they just draft good football players. And there are certain organizations that do that. They don't overthink it.
Baltimore Ravens.
Baltimore does. Detroit's been doing lately. Brad Holmes, the GM, because I agree with you. Baltimore's one of the birds like, no, that guy's a hell of a football player. We'll draft him. We'll take him. Nobody else wants him. We'll take him. Because they're always drafted at the bottom of the first round anyway. So they're like, we'll take him. Everybody passed on him. I don't know what they're looking at. And Detroit's been doing that lately too. 22% of Brad Holmes' draft picks since he became GM have become Pro Bowlers. Right? Yeah. He's like, no, I don't care about premium positions. I'm just going to draft a good football player. So they draft running backs and linebackers and safeties really high. Nobody else drafts those positions high, but they just draft. They're like, no, he's the best football player left on our board. So that's how they draft. So I like that. And to that point, that's Kelvin Banks in the show. People are starting to try to overthink this Kelvin Banks thing. They really are. I was like, arm lane. Oh, it is. Oh, he's not a mauler in the run game. I was like, have y'all seen this dude on the outside at tackle shut down? Like, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 first round draft picks on the edge. And now all of a sudden, we're not sure if he can play tackle in the league. Listen, he can play tackle in the league. All right, because he's one of those guys that on an island, one-on-one, he can keep up with elite talents at the edge, elite athleticism at the edge position. Now, I don't know. He may not be a mauler in the run game. That's something we've been talking about the Texas offensive line, right? I think he can become that. I think you can teach him how to do that. A lot of that is for him, maybe hand placement and just the way he kind of anchors his hips. But in terms of pass pro, which is probably the number one thing you want when you're drafting a tackle really high, is pass pro. As you're looking at, man, this dude pass protects as well. He's a natural. He's a natural, in my opinion, in pass protection on an island, being able to mimic and being able to move with elite edge defenders. So I know I've heard the stuff about guard. I think it's a little ridiculous and overblown. Yeah. I'm like, dude, that dude can play tackle in the league, guys. I'm sorry. I've seen it. I've seen him with SEC as his first round players on the edge. What else do you need to see from a tackle? He started season as a freshman. I'm a little confused by that, but I get it. My thing was if there's a tackle that doesn't work out at tackle, all those guys move to guard. But for this, some people are saying he should start at guard. I think that's asinine. That is ridiculous. With a capital ass. That is crazy. You should start him at tackle, and I think he'll end up staying at tackle. Honestly, I think he's good enough to stay at tackle. With the 49ers or a run game that wants to tackle to maul people, I think you got to work on that with him. He's got to work on that. Pass protection, I think he's honestly ready to go right away as a pass protector.
You're muted, Jeff.
I still like the idea of the 49ers drafting him, putting him on the right side, and then you just drafted your replacement for Trent Williams, and then you can move him over whenever Trent Williams retires if everything works out. But I agree with you, Rod, 100%. I even wrote about it at on TexasFootball.com. One of my first articles was teams are just going to overthink it with Kelvin Banks. They do it all the time. They overthink it. And, I go back to you. Actually, Rod, I was looking at this was your draft. This was the 03 draft. And this is the first time I remember this happening. And we talk about the Ravens are one of those organizations that just makes good picks. When Terrell Suggs was coming out of Arizona State, I think he had 22 and a half sacks, something stupid his last year at Arizona State. And everybody was up in arms because he ran a slow 40 at the combine. Yeah. I was like, oh, it's 40. Oh, it's 40. I'm like, well, if Terrell Suggs is ever having to run 40 yards in a game, something's really wrong or really good because he's running the end zone. I don't care what he can run in a 40. I know he can bend the corner and he's a great pass rusher. He should have been one of the first guys taken. He falls to 10 and the Ravens get an all-pro pass rusher. Yeah. Like, the teams that overthink it, it's like, Rod, everybody had friends like this. Your friends that continually overthink on the dating scene, they're the people that are perpetually single and to rack up the numbers like, all right, well, it's just going to fall to me then. It'll fall to me. It's the way it works. They just end up with making really good decisions because they just take good football players because other teams constantly overthink it. I think that's exactly what's going to happen with Kelvin Banks. And it's going to happen with Jahdae Barron. I guarantee you. Well, he's not quite 6 foot. I mean, he's not quite this or he's not quite that. Well, another instance, Rod, another guy that I loved in college. I went back and looked at your draft. This guy should have gone way before the 16th pick, but he fell to 16 and the Steelers took him. It was Troy Polamalu. Yeah. One of the best defensive players of his generation.
Yeah. Overthinking it, yeah.
You're right. You other idiots know how to do it right. That's why they do it right, because they just draft good players.
Yeah, Kyle Hamilton was there for the Ravens. Remember they dropped the 14? Like, he's a little too slow. We don't like the way he moves. It's like, what?
Yeah, every time the Ravens are on the clock, they make a pick. Like, oh, damn. Really? Come on. That guy's a great player. I mean, that's
Philly's like that too, right? Philly's like, how did that guy get to Philly? Like, how did Philly get that dude? What the hell?
Yeah, Jalen Carter with the 9th pick. I mean, that's come on, that's high treason right there. Yeah. That can't happen. That guy's too good. He's drag racing at some point. I know it's tragic, but at the same time, guy's really, really, really good. This says Football Junkie. I appreciate that super chat. 10 plus Longhorns we drafted this year. How many Longhorns do you guys think we drafted in the 2026 draft? Oh man.
Oh,
we're way down the road now. Okay. Anthony Hill. I'll just say Anthony Hill for sure. Will Arch Manning be in the draft? I don't know. I mean, we'll all see where that goes. That's next April. For sure, Anthony Hill, Mighty Muhammad for sure.
DJ
Campbell, Trey Moore. Those are guys who are immediate thoughts that will be 100%. But we appreciate that super chat. So 10 this year. I think it could be 12 or 13, just to be honest. As far as the numbers go, as far as 7 rounds of a draft. But your guys, when you talk about Kelvin Banks, I agree with you 100%. I mean, gosh, what's your job as left tackle? Protect the quarterback. What does he do? Great. Protect the quarterback. We'll figure out the rest, but protect the quarterback. Get his backside. He's done that for 3 years from 18 years old to 21 now. He's done that at Texas. What about Matthew Golden at 12 for Matt Miller? I mean, that is a guy. I know Rod was on this live stream way back, or actually was on the On Texas Watch Along when we were in game, and it was Coach Shipley talking about Jackson Shipley, his son, just raving about Matthew Golden. When he'd go to practice, he'd watch Matthew Golden run routes and just how much of a technician he was, how good he was. And it was Coach Bob Shipley who said, to the first time I heard it with my ears, was him saying he's his favorite receiver. And he talked about how Jackson kind of had to do that too. He wasn't the greatest athlete, but he had to, work at his craft. And now here we are, people are going back and watching this Matthew Golden tape from Houston and now Texas and saying, man, this guy is a really, really good football player.
Yeah, he's just a sound football player. Like I said, I don't know if his game has any tragic flaws. And I wonder what his elite traits are going to be athletically when he tests at the combine, things like that. I wonder how he'll test well. But there's no doubt, watching the film, his film is fantastic, especially from this year, because he showcased everything. Contested catchability, ability to separate. Because I kept questioning. I will be the first. I was like, I wonder if he can do this. I wonder if he can do that. And every week I felt like I would say, I wonder if he could do this, and he would do that. Like, I wonder if he can be a deep threat. And boom, he would start making plays, deep explosive receptions down the field. And I was like, I wonder if he can go, with his size, be a guy that can win the jump ball. And he won a few jump balls, contested catches. He was clutch. In terms of his red zone presence, Quinn loved him in the red zone. He was great on third down, on money downs for Texas. He was a precision route runner. So I just didn't see any weaknesses really in his game. And I think once they started watching the film, and like you said, probably went back to the Houston film and watched more of that too, they probably saw a linear, trajectory of his skill and development and thought to themselves, actually, man, if this guy, he got into a pro style system with Sark, with a better quarterback, upgraded, and his game exponentially improved. Hey, we're going to take him to another pro style system. He's already in one, and hopefully another upgraded quarterback, potentially weapons around him. And this is a guy that we believe could, his upside, potentially his ceiling is as a number one guy. Because otherwise, why would you draft a guy that high? I mean, you talking about right 12? What do you got, Matthew?
Matt Miller has him Cowboys 12.
That's what I'm saying. Like that, now Cowboys, it depends on, because now these about the NFL, because the wide receiver is a premium position, right? So now you got $30 million a year receivers who are the number one guys, and then you got like 22, $23 million a year receivers who are like the number two guys. That's the Eagles got, right? Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. Like that's a thing now. Like Miami's got it with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. That's a thing now. Your number two receiver is like a $20 million receiver.
You got $50 million in receivers.
Yeah. So I guess spending that kind of draft capital, because with CD number one, he would be a number two receiver with the Cowboys. But that's what teams are doing now, man. They really are looking at the receiver position in that way that, hey, man, we have to, if we're going to invest in quarterback, we need to double down on that investment with the weapons around him. The only team that's really not doing that is Kansas City, because they can afford to not do it because they got they got the man, right? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. The key things to remember about Matt Golden, if you're concerned, think about these couple things. One, Sark recruited him out of high school. He was at Klein Kane. He was a teammate of Jaden Blue. Sark doesn't recruit guys that can't run. So if you want to know about Matthew Golden's speed, I don't know what he'll run at the combine, but he's definitely not slow. Two, go back to his freshman year at U of H. When he had Clayton Tune, he put up really good numbers. I mean, U of H had one of the best passing offenses in the country that year.
That's right.
With Tank Dell and Golden was a part of that deal. They had a couple, I think was it Sam Brown, I think was a West Virginia transfer that they had. So they had some really good receivers for that team. The second year he was at Houston, Donovan Smith, completely different quarterback than Clayton Tune. His production dropped. The whole offense's production dropped. But then he gets to Texas and we see him be productive. And again, this is where whatever game you play, whenever I say this, get ready to play it. Everybody needs a kick return guy. You got to have a difference maker in the kick return game, and he might be the best kick return guy in the draft.
Yeah, well, I think that's right. I mean, Golden was a track guy in high school too. I mean, I think he's going to run a great 40 time. They're great is we'll see what that looks like. But he ran track in high school. He's not slow, and I think you said it right, Jeff, about what was going on at Houston and then here. And look, I mean, if we would have said who's going to be there's a wide receiver who's going to be drafted in the top 15 in this draft to start the year, we'd have said Isaiah Bond is that guy.
Yep.
But he got hurt. You had the injuries. And then it's Matthew Golden now emerging. And I think, as you guys said, going back and looking at that tape, saying, "Man, this guy's really a good football player." And if he runs a 4.4 in the 40 when he gets to Indianapolis, he's going to solidify everything people have seen.
Let me just surprising stat about Matthew Golden, and because a lot of things that will surprise you once you start watching the film. This is what scouts are looking at. Even who was that recently that said it? It wasn't Matt. I think it was Daniel Jeremiah. Actually, remember he's like, man, I watched the film and this guy, it's like, that might be my number one wide receiver. If you look at 20-plus yard passes, 20-plus yard receptions, Matthew Golden was tied for the most for any wide receiver in the country.
Wow.
He had 23 of them. Like, if I had told you, you were like, no, that's not true. It's like, yeah. Travis Hunter had 23 and Matthew Golden had 23. That tight end from Bowling Green, he actually had 26. That dude's a freak. Harold Fannin or whatever, he's a freak.
Yeah,
I saw him in Mobile. He's a good player.
Yeah, man, that's crazy to think about. You're like, because and they weren't all yak. He could do yak, but it was kind of a mix of some yak opportunities and some were deep shots down the field. And he surprises you, man, and there are pleasant surprises. The more film you watch on him, and the more research you do on him, the more you like him. And I think that's what's happening with Matthew Golden.
Yes, CB mentioned it earlier. I'll just go ahead and get this out of the way since it's draft season. Yes, Dennis Weathersby, a guy that got shot 3 days before the draft, was taken before Rod, but in Rod's defense, Asante Samuel went after Dennis Weathersby too, and he was an all-pro. So
that's true. That was a good DB draft.
DB.
Hey, you know what? No, you know what? Thank you, CB, for reminding me that. We just talked about how NFL front offices overthink it. Classic overthinking. Guy got shot. All right, and he was in a hospital bed. You're like, he's got a wingspan better than Rod Favors. I think his 40 times a little fast. Like, he's in the hospital bed, just got shot. All right, draft Rod B ahead of him, even though I don't even know, he might have had a better career than me, but still, All right, don't overthink it. All right,
Don't overthink it. Hey, real quick, and Rod sent me this, and CV sent us this, that Chip Brown over at 24/7 reported that, as we were just talking about a minute ago, that he's got a story out tonight that Steve Sarkisian, concerned about player wear and tear after 16-game season in 2024, is considering a revamped spring football schedule that could include no spring game, sources are saying. So we'll see. That's something we talked about a moment ago. We'll hear, because we're not going to hear from Sark tomorrow on National Signing Day. Rod, tell them about Andy Ludicky one more time, then we'll take some super chats and wrap up this Tuesday night live stream. But Andy Ludicky, one of our great partners.
No doubt about it, and very happy to have our friend Andy Ludicky and his team be a part of our team here at On Texas Football. Now, if you're looking to diversify your portfolio, you may be someone like me that has their hands in a lot of different businesses. Well, Andy can help you diversify by finding you different businesses that will fit your time allotment, but also your financial goals. If you've been stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks PTO and no control over the money you can make or your schedule in general, call Andy today, and he will take you through a process to help you find businesses that will fit your skill sets and your financial goals. Franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your financial destiny, call Andy today. See the number right there on your screen, 404-973-9901, or you can reach out to him via email at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. That's andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Thank you very much to Andy Ludicky and his team for being part of our team here at On Texas Football and sponsoring our Tuesday night live stream.
All right, last thing, guys. Let me ask you this, Jeff, about the coaches that retaining Tashard Choice, obviously, who interview with the Cowboys, and then adding 2 pieces. One coach coming in from Oklahoma State, one from Ohio State. Can you address that and just give our Tuesday night audience kind of a thought on the point of both of those hires, and obviously how important it was to keep Tashard Choice on the 40 acres, give him a pay raise. The Cowboys were interested, but Tashard Choice coming back.
The Lealon Clark hire makes sense because it's going to allow PK to kind of take more of a big picture view at practice. If he's got a guy that's just working with the edge group, you're just working with those guys. He can walk around, when it's individual. He doesn't have to just be with the edge guys. He can walk around and he go spend time with Kenny Baker's group. He can go spend time with Terry Joseph with the corners, or Blake Gideon with the safeties, whoever it is. So that makes sense. Hey, at this point where it doesn't matter how many guys you have on the field, the number is unlimited. Make use of your resources. Go beat Texas. You've got all this money for years. It was Texas has all these resources, doesn't know how to do it. Now that you're allocating your resources properly and you're doing what you're doing with it, now we're seeing the results. So I like that. The Jason McIndoe hire is interesting because, and I'm not saying it's going to be wholesale changes or anything, but anytime Sark brings in somebody on offense, they just add a little tweak or a little wrinkle. And, he coached those Cowboy backs at Oklahoma State. And I just think the 2 headline guys you've got in that tight end room, you've got Jordan Washington coming back as a sophomore, and you got Nick Townsend coming in as a true freshman. Those guys are athletic enough that you can have them do some Cowboy back stuff. They can both be move guys. Like, I think the only guy in the mix there, Spencer Shannon's exclusively an inline guy. So he is what he is. But with Washington and Townsend, you can do so many different things with those guys. I just think start getting some fresh ideas in the room about what to do with guys that are really true hybrid guys at the position. I don't think that can hurt at all. And I keep going back to, the 2-back stuff that Mike Gundy does. And the Cowboy backs were part of this. But, Rod, we always go back to that 2018 game Texas lost in Stillwater. They were 6th in the country. They go up there and they lose when Mike Gundy and Mike Yurcich, they unleashed Corndog Cornelius in the run game and had Chuba Hubbard playing fullback as a lead blocker for Justice Hill. So I just think, hey, get somebody that has some knowledge about 2-back stuff, how to use versatile tight ends. I like it. Like I said, I'm not saying it's going to be a wholesale change of the offense. I think it'd be foolish to think that, but just a little tweak. It could be something that we see down the road.
Yeah. Well, I also like that. Alan Clark. He has, and I didn't realize this too. Apparently, he is one of the owners of like a performance company that trains guys, trains NFL guys. Ed Oliver, Daniil Hunter, Jeffrey Simmons. So that's enough. I don't even know what the rules are about, when you're the CEO of a performance company, then now working with guys. I don't know about that, but he's got serious connections that'll help him in recruiting as well. And those connections, I believe also he's got a Louisiana background, if I'm not mistaken, too. Alan Clark, I believe as a matter of fact, I think he was like Northwestern State. He started out there and then from then on went elsewhere. So that helps because Baton Rouge and Louisiana, great recruiting hubs, fertile recruiting grounds. Also, the fact that they brought in, you talk about the short choice, that's that Atlanta area. Remember they brought in this young man, Josh Dunson, who is also supposed to help with the front office. And Brandon Harris, he has connections in Georgia, Georgia Tech, Atlanta area. So a lot of these guys, they have strategic connections to some of the most fertile recruiting grounds anywhere. So I think that's another added bonus to souping up these staffs. And I'll say this too. The teams that have been knocking on the door and then breaking down that door the last few years to win a national title, Ohio State, Michigan, even before that, Georgia, go look. I mean, they continuously added to their staffs year after year. It's one of the biggest reasons they were able to break through. Now, we're not expecting a splash hire like a Chip Kelly or anything like that because Texas has their coordinators. But if you still want to be able to, infuse new ideas and infuse new talent, new energy into the coaching staff, I like that Sark seems to do it year after year, even though it's not changing coordinators because Texas don't want to do that. But we have seen some of the other schools that won championships go to that, right? That was kind of their extreme to help them get over the top. I like the Texas little by little still in this arms race, beefing up the coaching staff, man. Like that's one of the ways it helped Ohio State get over the top. Look at what Michigan did. Help Jim Harbaugh kept tweaking that damn staff. Then he kept tweaking it year after year till he finally got his guys, went to the league to get guys. I think you got to look at improving that staff. You're keeping your guys is a big part of that, but also, and now that, as Jeff mentioned, the rules allow you to just have unlimited coaching staff. Hell, use it.
No, I mean, again, you want continuity. I think that's important for any staff and for all the reasons we talk about. But adding new ideas, bringing in outside ideas can't hurt. And gosh, Sark, I mean, if he has a nightmare at night, it's about goal line offense, right? And you said about the Cowboy backs, Jeff. I mean, they've lost 5 games the last 2 years. They've won 25. And how many of those losses have come at the goal line, right? I mean, probably 3 or 4 of them have come right there in the red zone. So, this has to keep Sark, up at night thinking, okay, how do we get better in that spot? And that's the margins they're in now. You're trying to make 1 or 2 more plays to win a game that gets you to play for a national title. And anybody that can bring some ideas on that is a good idea.
Yeah, and real quick, because my man Jose asked this in the chat. He said, does the no-limit assistant coach rule apply to those coaches on the road as well? No, you can only have 11 coaches designated to go on the road. That's why Texas has Chris Gilbert designated to go on the road to recruit because he was doing work down in Georgia. He had a really big hand in the Justice Terry recruitment.
Okay. Hey, guys, good stuff on a Tuesday. Good to see you, Jeff, of course, been a bit. And Rod, always great on a Tuesday. A lot of fun. I mean, gosh, it never ends. It never slows down. There won't be much on National Signing Day tomorrow. There will not be a Steve Sarkisian news conference. We've been informed of that. So, the next time we hear from Sark might be when it's about, previewing spring and however that spring's going to look. And we'll talk about that on future episodes here on Tuesday nights. And, of course, 8 o'clock tomorrow, coffee and football, the whole lineup tomorrow and throughout the week as we get you towards the Super Bowl on Sunday and beyond. Guys, good stuff. And look forward to next Tuesday.
Welcome.
Absolutely.